I guess we are speaking on the individual aspect, but however, as what you deal with, corporations, CEOs, leaders that are already set in their ways, but things are kind of shaky and they need your advice. The floor is yours, Mike.
Well, there are more of those people in the world than we might expect. You're in a line of work in your ministry in which you deal with a lot of them in churches.
Yes.
Some of the most challenging change management work that I have ever done has been in church and church-related organizations. So any of us who spend the number of years that you and I have around congregational life have had those abundant opportunities to deal with people who had very strong opinions as to how things should be done. But let me address the question more in terms of what we would typically deal with in the business or corporate world, rather than the broader range of relationships that we have in which we might be dealing with someone who's set in their ways. But at the same time, knowing that what I'm saying in the specific context of corporate and company leadership is basically applicable to any situation in which you're dealing with someone who is, to use our term, set in his or her ways. Because the intervention is going to be an interpersonal intervention. We're not going to be able to simply send them to a seminar or have them read a book. If they're set in their ways, something is going on that is much deeper than just a difference of opinion with us and others on how things should be done. And so the necessary framework for dealing with people who are very, very strong in their opinions, are very determined that they're not going to make a change, is that we have to do some things by way of preliminary. First of all, we need to understand that people who are entrenched about something that we often don't even take into account when we decide how we're going to intervene. When I'm dealing with executives, with entrepreneurs, with co-workers on a team who tell me so-and-so is entrenched in his ways or her ways, and I say, what's the issue? I get one of two responses. One is either an attack on their character. He's lazy, he's bullheaded, he's obstinate, those kinds of ad hominem attacks on the character of the individual. Or I get the response, she's just not motivated. Our default responses are there's something wrong with their personality or they are not motivated. And occasionally I deal with people who genuinely are not motivated. But the reality is that there are a number of other reasons, 7 that I have in the matrix that I'm running when I'm talking to someone like this, why people are not joining forces with others in a change or a new initiative that we are launching. So first of all, I've got to come to this with the mindset that I'm not going to accept a superficial analysis. We're going to do a diagnosis of what are the deeper factors, the deeper causes that are leading this person to dig in his or her heels at this point on this issue. Secondly, in order for me to get to those deeper issues, they have to be comfortable in being vulnerable with me. Because many times what's holding someone back is something that they have not talked to people about, something that's very private. And before they're going to reveal to me something that they feel vulnerable about or feel that they need to protect and keep private, I have to create an atmosphere in which it's safe for them to disclose. And that, therefore, has a lot to do with the kind of relationship that I have with them. I said in an earlier program that in order for people to trust, and I'm asking this person to trust me big time now when I begin to probe into what's going on beneath what's going on. In order for that person to trust me, they have to feel 5 things. They have to feel safe, informed, respected, valued, and understood. And I think this is maybe the 3rd program that I've mentioned those 5, but I keep coming back to them because they are foundational. We do not encourage the kind of interaction in which people feel absolutely free to divulge or disclose things that they have held closely to themselves for a long time, and in their mind for a good reason, unless we are good at helping them feel safe, informed, respected, valued, and understood. And it may be that I'm not the person that needs to be talking to them about their entrenchment, because I'm not a person whose past with them has left them feeling that I have really listened to them, that I understand them, that I really respect them. Maybe I've said some things in anger or frustration that have been cutting or even insulting, put downs, so that they don't feel psychologically safe with me. They may feel physically safe. And most of the people I've intervened with could wipe me out in a moment if we were to go to blows. So none of them feel physically threatened by me. But I am a strong personality. I have a strong voice. I have a strong presence. And that in itself can make some people not feel safe. And so there may need to be a quieter voice who intervenes in some of the things that I'm talking about now. So we've got to, first of all, recognize the need to approach them in a way that makes it easy for them to disclose. And then third, we have to recognize that the causal factors underneath something like this are usually somewhat deep. They are going to require us not to talk so much as to listen, and to listen only after we have asked some very good questions and then gone silent. When I'm trying to figure out why someone is entrenched and will not move forward, I'm going to assume I don't have a clue. And I'm going to play Columbo. I'm going to come in and ask very, very simple, basic questions, assuming all along that what I'm here to do is to listen and pick up clues from their answers as to where we need to intervene in order to make the change that will make the difference so that they no longer are resistant to change. So those are the preliminaries. And I just sort of leave my introduction at that point, that those are the things that we have to be prepared to do before we get into the specific ways in which we might intervene.
Wow. Let me ask you this. Those 5 things, the first one, I'm going to start with the first one. How do you create an atmosphere for someone like the person we're speaking about? How do you go about creating an atmosphere of safety to that person, that they feel safe enough to, let's say, peel this onion back and get to what's his problem? And someone would have to feel safe. I got that. That's awesome. And that would have to be probably number one for the rest of it to happen. But how do we create an atmosphere of safety for this kind of person?
Well, part of it is the bearing that you maintain physically when you are talking to them. People read a lot into our body language. And so I'm going to make a point to be as relaxed as possible when I'm talking to them, to be in a position in which I'm not at all placing my body or my hands or turning my head in such a way that could be seen as aggressive. I want them to see me as a non-threatening presence. And so one of the things that I will do if we're sitting down, is that I'm going to notice how they are sitting. And then I'm going to match that. If they're sitting with their arms crossed and they're leaning back, I'll cross my arms and lean back. If they've got their chin kept in their hand, I'm going to probably cup my chin in my hand. I'm not going to be obvious about it.
Right.
But I'm trying to build rapport with them. And if you ever see two people in a restaurant talking who are in deep rapport, one of the things you will notice if you study them carefully is that they are beginning to mirror one another. They've got their feet similarly positioned. They've got their arms similarly positioned. They're holding their heads in similar ways. When we get in deep rapport with people, we can be easily in such sync with them that when they move, we mirror it. We move the same way ourselves. And so we can then use that unconscious drive within us to our advantage when we're working with people. And that is, we try to mimic in the best sense of the word. We're trying to be a mime who behaves exactly like they do, because if this person is like me, he's not a threat to me. At least not nearly the threat that I would perceive him to be if he is sitting here with his hands on the table and one fist is doubled and he's leaning over talking at me and the eye contact is pretty accusatory. That's the second thing I'm going to work with. I'm going to work with my eye contact. I'm going to be sure that my face is relaxed and comfortable, and that the eye contact that I'm making is affirming and gentle. That those kinds of things are the way I'm going to handle the immediate situation. Now, prior to that, if we're dealing with someone that's in our workspace, I'm going to be certain that I'm careful with the comments I make to them, so that my language and especially my tonality or my gestures don't create a sense that I'm being assertive or aggressive in a way that's putting them on the defensive. And I'm going to do that as I know them, knowing that one day I want to have this accountability conversation with them about why they are so set in their ways and dug in. But I want that conversation to be framed by a history that I have with them, that I have been sending them messages, you are safe around me. When I'm coaching, many times I will realize in the first session, there's something that I need to really confront this person on, but as yet, I'm not sure the safety is strong enough to bring it up. And so I'm going to go out of my way to be sure that I'm building the safe zone for that person, that I can get into this really sensitive issue 2 or 3 sessions downstream. And I will be watching the interaction we have in the meantime, looking for the signals that will say to me, I can bring this subject up now. And then I'll just work it right into the conversation rather naturally. So those are the kinds of things that help people feel safe. What don't help them feel safe is hearing us making a lot of derogatory comments about other people. They will say, okay, what is he saying about me when I'm not around? Making inappropriate jokes about racial minorities or ethnic minorities or women or men or graduates of this school or that school. When we are in senior leadership positions, people see us all the time as though we are on stage with a spotlight on us, and they're watching everything we do generalizing that to this is what this person is really like when the spotlight is not on. And so when I'm in the spotlight, I'm going to be as circumspect as possible in my behavior so that I'm sending a message to people. I'm approachable. I'm a safe person to talk to. I am here for you. I want to be at your disposal. Those are the types of messages I want to send anytime I'm before a group or in a group, because that's setting the frame that I'm going to depend on later on when I want to sit down with them feeling safe.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine that this is on a case by case scenario. I want to know, does this safety feeling that you have put this person or this company or CEO, whoever in, does that come over time, or is this an immediate? You trying to do this right now, or does this take like 2 or 3 sessions for someone, or is it depending on the situation and the individual?
Yeah, it depends on the context and the relationship. Mm-hmm. Now, when I'm coaching someone, they are not people that I'm with on a continuing basis. Mm-hmm. Most of the people that would be hearing this and applying it to their own situation are in work circumstances where they're around someone with some regularity, either as a supervisor of that person or as a colleague, a peer, a fellow team member. And so in that case, they have all kinds of opportunities ahead of time to build a kind of rapport and a kind of non-threatening relationship that this person will feel comfortable about being vulnerable in a conversation with. In my case, as a coach, I'm coming in with limited periods of time, limited exposure to the person outside of this immediate context. So I'm going to use some techniques that get me to the subject faster. And the thing is that people at a C-suite level or a senior executive level or an entrepreneur level who hire someone like me as a coach, they're looking for someone who will hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. And so I've got a role that gives me a little bit more ability to be probing in my questions early on and to be confrontational in my tone, if that's needed at an earlier point, than would be the case if I were just meeting them for the first time as a colleague or a friend who has only recently made their acquaintance. So I've got an advantage, and I will press that, but I will be very careful not to press it too hard, because I've worked with some very senior executives with multi-million-dollar a year salaries, mm-hmm. who had deep insecurities and deep fears. And we've got to be as gentle with their insecurities and fears as we are with anyone else. And so right. You develop a sixth sense after a while as to who you can move more quickly with and who you need to spend a little time being reserved in your comments and the direction you take the conversation.
And that's real good, because I had I want to ask you, and I see Karen, I see you have a question. I'm going to get to that in 1 second, but I want to ask you, like, with these guys, these C-suite, these millionaires that you're dealing with, these very wealthy men and women that you are coaching, has there ever been a time that it just didn't work? They were not going to let the guard down. They were not going to feel safe with you. They were just stuck and you couldn't get through. Has there ever been one like that?
I've had some that bordered on that, if that's not exactly a good description of it. And part of it is it had nothing to do with their trust with me or the tone with which the conversation was going forward. There are people who, in senior executive positions, hire coaches as virtue signaling. they're wanting to send to their organization the signal that I will hire a coach. And so when I hire a coach for you, I expect you to participate. And I've had people play that game with me, and I have given them up as clients. After 3 or 4 sessions, it became apparent to me that their whole purpose in having me work with them was simply so they could say to everybody, well, see, I've got a coach. You should work with a coach too. But what he expects them to do with their coach is not something he's willing to do with his coach.
Right, right.
And at that point, I'm not going to play that game any longer.
He playing
And
big me, little you.
I can think right now of 2 or 3 that fall into that category.
That's good stuff. I figured that. Here, I think Karen has something in the chat here. It says, and you may have answered it. I'm not sure. It says, and Karen is one of your big. She probably is your biggest fan, or no, other than me. But how do you effectively? You may have answered this. I'm not sure. How do you effectively lead people who are deeply resistant to change without creating conflict or damaging trust?
Okay. One of the things that I should have said early on, and I will slip it in here because it is germane to this question, is that the realities of running a business is that sometimes the time it will take to get someone to change is just time that you don't have. And you get to the point that if their recalcitrance, if their entrenchment is damaging morale and productivity in your organization, you may just have to let them go, or find some way to move them into a situation where their behavior can't be so damaging to things that are critical operations. But in terms of the question that is asked, would it be okay if I shared a screen?
Sure. How do we do this here? Do I have to make you co-host or something? Right?
If you can, if you can't, I'll talk through it. It would be a little bit easier if I had a way to do this. But don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll just make it work. Okay. The earlier portion of our conversation, I spent saying don't make superficial judgments about why this person has heels dug in.
But Mike, before you go any further, Mike, you are a co-host. You can share your screen if you like.
Okay, all right. So what I did just before we came on is I loaded up a I loaded up a PowerPoint that I've used in various settings, thinking that this kind of question might come along, and I would want to be able to demonstrate it this way rather than just try to talk it through and force you to have to envision everything I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Can everyone see the missing piece model title slide?
Yes, I see it. I see it.
Very good. Sure. All right.
Yep.
When someone has the heels dug in, it may be a motivation issue. That's our default decision many times, but we ought to hold off on making the default decision until we explore some other possibilities. One possibility is that the change would be a threat to their identity. Mm-hmm. Another possibility is that the change would be a threat to some value that they hold dear. Another possibility is that the change would be a threat to a conviction that they hold and hold on to tenaciously for a variety of reasons. So I want to be in a diagnostic mood rather than an instructional mood when I'm talking with them. And I want to try to identify what is perhaps the deeper thing that is bothering them. And so this is just a little chart that is something of a checklist. And on the left column, we're going to look at someone who lacks something, and that's what's keeping them from taking a bolder step and align themselves with the change we're wanting them to make. And over here on the right column is what's missing if that's what they lack. So maybe the person just does not have a want to. I don't want to do it. In that case, the missing link really is motivation. That's appropriate intervention, is to find a way to motivate them. Now then, the problem we have with motivation is that the instinctive way we go about trying to motivate people is to put incentives in front of them. Motivation, we talked about this in an earlier episode. Motivation is based on the Latin term motus, which gives us our word motor, but it also gives us the word motion, and it gives us the word motive, and it gives us the word emotion. For someone to be motivated, they first have to have a motive. They have to have something that they would get by way of benefit if they did what we are motivating them to do. Second, and this is where we appeal to their values, incidentally, and to the things that are important to them, because that's where their motives are going to be found. But think about the crime shows that we watch on TV. A lot of them, the detective, the police force identifies a number of people who have motives to have killed the person. But only one person did it, or one or two people actually did it. All these others had motive, but they were never motivated to do it. When we find a person who was motivated to do it, the motive got tied to an emotion, a jealousy, a resentment, a grudge that's been carried for a long time, and the motive coupled with the emotion resulted in motivation that put the person in motion. Okay? We've got to if we're going to motivate someone, we've not only got to find something that gives them a motive to change, we also have to marry emotion to that. That's a whole topic in and of itself. But in other words, we're trying to find a way to excite them, to intrigue them, to create some curiosity in them. We're trying to find some emotions that we know will move them to tie to the motive, and those two together give us motivation. Well, we're going to move on because we can read all kinds of books on motivation, but we won't necessarily be seeing books on other things. If someone lacks a how-to, the first person lacked a want-to, they needed motivation. This person lacks a how-to. They just don't know how to do it. And they may be embarrassed to confess in front of people that they don't know how to do it. This is very common in corporate life. People are moved up very quickly into a role that suddenly a host of things are expected of them that they just don't know how to do. But they don't want to embarrass themselves or lose credibility in the eyes of their peers by being open about not knowing how to do it. But if I'm intervening to try to find out why they are dug in, I'm going to try to find out if what's missing is a how-to. If so, the issue is not going to be solved with a motivational speech. I'm going to have to give them some training that gives them the skills, either by sending them to a class or putting them in a self-study program or doing some one-on-one coaching and training, whatever. Now, if someone lacks a chance to, then the issue is access to systems and structures. A lot of people are in situations where top management says, I want you to do this, but they know that the politics within the organization are such that from their position, they really don't have a chance to. There are too many people who can block what they would be having to do if they fulfilled the change we were asking them to make. There are people who could subvert their success if they took it on. Those kinds of political issues often leave people without a chance to. I'll give you an example out of my own personal life. I grew up in a very, very poor family. We lived on a subsistence farm. Very few in my family tree had finished high school. No one had ever gone on to college. But my two closest friends in elementary school were both sons of reasonably well-to-do middle-class families in our town, whose parents were college graduates, and the assumption from the time I met them in the second and third grade were that they would be going to college too. And so they were always talking about where they were going to go to college. Well, I knew college costs a lot of money. I knew my family didn't have any, but it seemed like if I wanted to get ahead in the world, I needed to go to college. I had no idea how I could do it. I had the motivation. My grades were good enough and would remain good enough. I knew how to study. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that with my limited finances, in an era in which there were not very many government programs to send poor kids to college with, I didn't have access to the system. I didn't have a chance to. And what delivered me from that is that when I was in the seventh grade, an aunt who was not well-to-do, but she was steadily employed, and she was a big fan of TV. And so she was one of the first to buy a TV in her neighborhood. And when she got a new one, she gave us the old one. Everybody else in my circle of friends had TVs for 4 or 5 years, but we were getting our first TV. And I just stayed glued to that TV hour after hour. And one of the shows it was on was called Men of Annapolis. And it was stories set on the campus of the U.S. Naval Academy. And from that show, I learned that if I could get a Naval Academy appointment, the government would give me an education, a degree in science and math, and I would have the ticket I needed to go on to things beyond just being another family farmer. That was my chance to. Mm-hmm. And that's where I ended up eventually being a career officer in the Navy. It is where I got interested in getting into universities and highly competitive programs, because I finally found the chance to. A lot of people don't have the chance to, but they don't have anything that intervenes quasi-miraculously, as was the case with me, and shows them how to do it by way of access to systems and structure. Now then, perhaps we've got someone whose problem is not a want to or a how to or a chance to, but a way to. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the right personnel. They don't have the right equipment or equipment that is the right generation of, that's running the right generation of software or technology. There are all kinds of ways we can lack the resources to do what we wanted to do. Now, I told you a moment ago that one of the things that was holding me back from thinking I could go to college was not only the chance to, but once I got a chance to, then I had to have the resources, and that meant I didn't have a way to. And so I had looked at ways I could possibly go to community colleges and things like that, but my family didn't have enough money that I had the resources. So that gave me a chance to, but not a chance to that gave me a way to. The Naval Academy promise gave me the chance to and the way to at one time. Another thing that holds people back is they just don't have a why to. The rationale that has been offered for doing what we're asking them to do doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't or maybe there's no rationale been given them. We're terribly bad about tasking people without giving them the why. And yet, the most fundamental question we ask as human beings is why? Why? As soon as children are able to start putting sentences together, they start pressing us and sometimes driving us nearly crazy with the why. And it's not because they suddenly thought of this question. That curiosity has been running inside of them for quite some time, but now they have the facility of language in which they can put that question to the world. But that deep need to find meaning to the things that they see and don't understand lives on with us all the way through life. And none of us like to be tasked with busy work. And so it may be that this person is being asked to make some changes that they don't see the why to change, and therefore it comes across to them as just busy work. It makes no sense to me as to why I should be involved with this. And so it's a matter of giving them a better rationale. Some just don't feel a need to. What they're missing is a sense of duty or obligation. A friend of mine, now gone, here in Dallas, went to the Southeast Asian area on a trip for his church. And he was back in a very remote jungle village where they had a doctor and they had a pharmacy, but the pharmacy had no drugs whatsoever. He even took some pictures of these empty shelves. And he came back home and talked to some people about we need to raise some money to provide some medicine for a pharmacy in such and such a country. And people sort of showed an interest, but the amounts they gave him were rather token. And so he had a dinner one night, and he got out a movie screen, and he showed his slides of that trip to the village. But he didn't talk about the pharmacy. He said, well, this is the village, and this is the little medical clinic I finished, and here's the pharmacy, and here's the kids that were playing. And somebody said, wait a minute. Go back a slide. And he said, why? And they said, that pharmacy, go back there. I said, you said this is a pharmacy? Yeah. Well, there's no medicine on the wall. Yeah, I know, but that's the way it is there, I guess. Here are the kids who were playing outside, and here's a bicycle that I went riding. Wait a minute. Let's go back to that pharmacy. Why are there no drugs on the shelves? When he finally finished the presentation, the first question that everybody asked was, well, why are there no medicines on the shelves? He raised enough money that night to take care of that pharmacy for months and months to come, because suddenly people sensed a need to. He had been talking about the why to. We need to raise some money for that clinic over there and its pharmacy. But the why to didn't resonate as much as the need to once they saw the pictures and could relate directly to the need. So sometimes we have to use a lot of imagination to help people who don't have a sense of duty or obligation to get behind something that we want them to do. And finally, don't have to. And this says a sense of urgency. I'm changing that in this slide series to a sense of necessity. When I come to this one, I think about my father, who was a great fisherman, and we lived on near the Sabine River, just a few miles from it. The Sabine in those days had no lakes on it, and so during heavy rainfall, it would rise and get out of its banks and sometimes be nearly a mile wide coming through East Texas. And when the river would start rising like that, the big catfish would come upstream. And so Dad would have his trot lines out to be able to snag some of those big catfish as they moved upriver. But to get to where his best fishing ground was, we had to cross a slough that was dry most of the year, except when it was raining, and then it would fill with water coming from the surrounding hills headed to the river. The loggers had built a wooden bridge across that slough so that they could go in and out as they felled trees. And to get to his favorite fishing place, you had to be driving at pretty high speed down a dirt road that was muddy, really, and slick with a black clay that is deposited along that river there. And you had to get going at a real high speed, hit that bridge with a lot of speed, and get enough power onto your engine and your transmission that you could climb a steep hill on the other side, which was also slick with mud if it had been raining a lot. Well, it had been raining a lot, and he goes barreling in there with his pickup, and as he comes around the curve and starts down the hill to the bridge, he realizes the bridge is washed out, and there's no way he can stop. So the truck goes off into the slough. The water starts rising. He gets out. No problem for him. He's a great swimmer. But all of his tools are in a toolbox in the back of that truck, one of those boxes that fills half the bed of a truck, that had electrical drills and presses and all kinds of tools that he worked with. His livelihood was in the back of that truck. So he hiked back out, had someone bring him home. We got another truck and started back down there to try to figure out a way to winch that truck out of the water and retrieve his tools. And as we were coming into the river bottom, the game warden was coming out, and he saw him and said, Red, you can't get in there. I've just been in there with my four-wheel Jeep. I can't get in there. You certainly can't get in there with this pickup. And Dad looked at him and said, Warden, the difference between you and me is that you don't have to get in there. I have to get in there. And sure enough, we did. So that sense of necessity is sometimes missing, and we need a have to in order to get things done.
Yes.
So with that, let me kill the share here.
Yes, yes.
And what we're doing is trying to find out which of these is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that by asking questions like, when you think about possibly doing this, what is the thing that concerns you the most about being able to do it well? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I'm not going to argue with the person when I get an answer. I'm going to just listen. Are they telling me that they don't know how to, or that they don't see a reason to, or they don't feel an obligation to? I'm listening to the answer to see which of these I'm hearing. And then as we continue the conversation and I continue to listen, I'm beginning to map in my mind how we're going to intervene and undo what is lacking by whatever intervention we make.
Wow. And that, Mike, thank you so much for that in-depth slideshow. The question, ladies and gentlemen, was how to impact those already set in their ways. That, Mike, I'm sure that these ways that you just gave, what was it? Want to, how to, chance to, way to, why to, need to, have to. Mm-hmm. Someone set in their ways may come out of that through one of these examples that you have given. If they don't see a need,
let me tell you something else that you have to do, Floyd, because this doesn't cover all the possibilities, but it catches a pretty big portion of them. One question that is always at the tip of my tongue is, have you ever been part of something like this before? And tell me about that experience. Because many times the reason people are resistant to change is because they have been burned in the past by getting on board with a change. And they are scarred so much that they have made a determination, I'm never going to change again. I'm never going to do this kind of thing again. I tried that once. I learned my lesson. You don't have to teach me twice. And I want to know what other possible causes might be behind their reticence other than just these things that I've talked about. And that's a question that gets us here. When you consider doing this, what are your greatest concerns? What are the things? Another way to come at the same thing is, as you think about the possibility of jumping in and working with us on this, what makes you most uncomfortable? Or makes you most uneasy. If I think uncomfortable is too strong a word, I'll use the word, what makes you uneasy? Because that's going to tell me where their fears are, where their anxieties are, where their lack of confidence is. Those may be the real issue. And the motivation is there. It's just one of these other concerns is keeping them from moving forward.
Thank you so much, Mike. My panel, you guys didn't get too much of a chance to interact tonight because these questions came from outside. These questions pour in after the our show has been aired, and there's Mike. You might be here for the next 2 months with the rate that these questions are coming in. Next week, Mike will be here with us again. You guys tune in, man. Make sure you guys tune in, man. I love you guys, man. I love my panel. You guys are awesome. And Mike, you never cease to amaze me. As I said before, if you saw the notebook I have on you, like I said, you would probably send me a bill. Because every time I'm here interviewing you, my brother, I am learning so much, man. There are things that I never thought about, and that you give me that it's now, and it's so prevalent and it's so useful to me today. It's useful. I use this stuff. I can hear you. Mike said this. Okay, I'll handle it. Like, okay, let me try that. And these things, they work, man. They work. So you're awesome, man. You're awesome. I see. Before we go, I see Tony has his hand up. So go ahead. Go ahead. You gotta unmute.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Okay, Tony.
Once again, man, you always hit the nail on the head for me, anyway. For those of you guys that don't know Mike Armour and his books that are out, when he's not on this radio, you could go out and if you purchase the book, you still get a piece of him because he puts everything into these books. And any organizations that want Mike to appear, Mike will come right out to your organization. You'll feel like $1 million based on his knowledge. I mean, it's a treasure chest. It's priceless. And I'm sure you guys agree. But Mike, thank you again. You always make me look good. And man, we got a long time to be together, Mike.
I hope so.
Yeah, you guys. Hey, listen, Mike has become a part of the family. Once you hear twice, 2 times, or let your voice be heard, you become a family member. You guys, Mike is a very close family member. Some people are relatives. Then you got your family and you got relatives. Mike's a family member, so he's been here quite some time.
He's one of the brothers.
Yes, indeed. My panel, you guys definitely are family members. We love you guys, man. You guys keep coming, man. Keep coming and let your voice be heard. It's your boy now.
Come on, it's time to jam. How come we don't hear it?
Huh?
How come we don't hear it?
Be quiet too long.
There you go. There you go.
Turn down songs, clock keeps ticking on the wall.
Step for me, Mike.
Still missing from the wall. Let your voice be heard. Say every single word. From the low to the sky. Throw your hands up high. Let your voice be heard. Loud, clear, undeterred. If it shakes the room, that's how you know it's you. Tucked deep in your chest, heart tapping out, say it confess. Crowd might stare, let them do what they do. They never held a fire living in you. Let your voice be heard. Say every single word, from the low notes to the sky. Throw your hands up high. Let your voice be heard. Loud, clear, undeterred. If it shakes the room, that's how you know it's you. Stand up, you're the leader of this. One spot, one shout, watch the silence spread. That power in your mouth is the truest thing you feel. Oh, let your voice be heard. Say every single word, from the low notes to the sky. Throw your hands up high. Let your voice be heard. Loud, clear, undeterred.
There's another show right after this. You forgot.
That's you. Step in, lean in, mic off. Never again.
It's your boy now.